century, smallpox made history by becoming the first disease to be eliminated from planet Earth. In this century, Rotary wants to make polio the second. Since 1979, Rotary has led the efforts in fighting polio, and now we are this close. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of TAGLINE, where we unveil Rotary District 9212. I am your host, Rotarian Caroline Giro. In today's episode, we discuss the End Polio campaign. And on our show today, we have the distinguished guests, the Rotary Foundation trustee, Gita Manek, and the District Polio Officer, Dr. David Githanga.
This is the time when we can eradicate polio, and we will. Believe me, in our lifetime, we will.
We are this close to ending polio, and we will end it with your effort and participation.
Today, we talk about, yes, you guessed it, ending polio now. So we'll first start by asking our guests to first introduce themselves. Maybe we can start with you, Trustee Gita. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Caroline. My name is Gita Manek. I have been in Rotary for the last 28 years, a member of the Rotary Club of Muthaiga, and I enjoy Rotary. I'm passionate about making a difference that I can within our communities. And my real job, to put bread and butter on my table, is real estate. It used to be retail till very recently, but now it's only real estate. We develop and procure properties for offices and residential. Rotary has taken up a lot of it is a way of life for me, actually. So my lives run together, my profession. If I am called to serve in any capacity at any time, I will be there because I know I can make a small difference in the lives of people.
Indeed, I like that you talked about the magic of Rotary, which is very important. And one thing you have not mentioned is that you're also a history maker, being the first female district governor of our district, which was called 9200 then. Yeah, so thank you.
So that was a difficult time for ladies in Rotary. First women were brought into Rotary in late 1980s. First member of the Rotary Club was Sylvia Whitlock many years ago. And she had to fight a court battle to be accepted into Rotary. She broke the ceilings in the Western world. And when it came to our part of the world, we had lady district governor in South Africa. To the best of my knowledge, maybe one in Nigeria. But on our part of the world, in East Africa, I was nominated to be the first woman governor. And actually, I feel very good about it, although I was fearful of that role at that time. But you'll be amazed at the support you get from women in Rotary, and they all wanted to make sure that I succeed. And it is because of the men and the women in Rotary who were, helping me in my role, and we work together very well.
Thank you very much, Trustee. So we turn over to you, Dr. I know you also are a man of many hats. I know you're a double doctor, a medical and both PhD. We are very honored to have you, and you're also a Rotarian. Tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, first of all, I wish that I had more than one hat because I only have one. It's getting a bit aged. So many hats would be helpful. I live to 190. Yeah. So as you've been told, my name is David Githanga. I am a Rotarian since 1994. Having been invited by the late Yusuf Kodawala, who was my teacher and good friend as well. He passed on last year. The wife died, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And may their soul rest in peace. I'm also a practicing doctor. I'm a pediatrician, so I spend a lot of time seeing children, talking to mothers and communities, because pediatric practice is societal practice. You deal with everyone. My day job is seeing children. Open your mouth, let's play, can I feel your tummy? Just fooling around. Kids are not interested in how clever you are. They're interested in being comfortable and not getting an injection. So you learn just being able to talk easy. As I said, I've been in Rotary since 94 and in Rotary Club of Nairobi. The first lady member of that club, which is the third oldest in the country, in the region, was Evelyn Mungai, past President Evelyn Mungai, who was the first lady Rotarian in that very male, heavily male.
She was actually the first lady Rotarian in our entire district.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and the first president of a Rotary club.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Very, very powerful person. I also am involved a lot with basically mentoring and training of our pediatricians through our association, professional association. I'm involved in a couple of things. For the last 23 years, I was on the board of Barnados, just basically, again, seeing children. I also sit on the board of World Vision, doing similar things like Rotary. So I'm in that sort of a space. And I'm happy to have been asked to speak about polio.
Thank you. Maybe you can also tell us about your involvement, your role in Rotary.
Yes, and polio, yes. I think for the last 5 years, I've been asked to be the polio officer for the district. Initially, of course, we had a wider, like when Gita was the district governor, the district was bigger. And of course, it shrunk when Tanzania and Uganda, we lost those two countries, or they created other jurisdictions. But I've been in that space for the last 5 years, essentially being polio officer. And part of that has been to educate people about what polio is and so on, to advocate. But more importantly is to tell people about issues of immunizations and disease prevention, which is a major aspect of what Rotary does. And because that's also what I do on a day-to-day basis, I find it relatively easy to do that. I've been trying to wriggle out of being the permanent polio officer in the district. And I must say that this year we have had a lot of interest in Rotarians wanting to know what's polio, what can we do, and so on. So this particular conversation is very, very useful, because we want, at the end of the day, to let you see what you can do as a Rotarian wherever you are.
So, like I mentioned to you people earlier, we have people of even maybe my age mates and even younger, who constitute maybe a bulk majority of even the Rotarians in our district today, and even guests out there who may have never interacted with polio, the disease. They probably have not met somebody that they personally know who has polio or who has suffered from polio. And so when they see this big furore being created around polio and vaccinations, to them, it's like an enigma. Why polio? Why not something else? So maybe we can start from the very beginning, maybe with you, Dr. Githanga. Could you tell us, what is polio?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Polio is, first of all, a disease, right? It's a paralyzing disease that's caused by a virus. When you talk about infections, it can be caused by bacteria, it can be caused by fungus, it can be caused by viruses. And viruses in general do not have a treatment, unlike an antibiotic that's given for bacterial infection. So polio is caused by a poliovirus, and there are usually three: type 1, type 2, and type 3. When you get polio, we need to distinguish between wild polio virus, which means poliovirus as it exists in the environment. It's very, very important, because then that will come to distinguish between polio that can be actually created by a change in a vaccine that has been changed. And I will deal with that a little bit, because it confuses a lot of people. You cannot run away from defining polio until you let people know that there are two types of polio vaccines. There's the oral polio vaccine, which is live vaccine. There is the injectable polio vaccine, which came into the picture in the 60s. That is a killed vaccine. And we administer those side by side. The oral polio vaccine, which is a live vaccine, gives you protection yourself, gut immunity, as well as societal immunity. Okay, so there is an advantage of that, because you save yourself and you save the people around you. We call it herd immunity. The injectable polio, we use it in places where you have eradicated polio. It's a kill vaccine. It protects you, but it's not a community, doesn't give the community an added advantage. Why do I bring in this significant issue? Because many people get confused about vaccine-associated polio disease, right? A virus, and that's a general characteristic of viruses do change. So an attenuated or broken down virus can become wild. And of the 3 types of viruses, type 1, type 2, type 3, is a type 2 that has a tendency to change and can induce a paralyzing disease. And a paralyzing disease, fortunately, I do not have to explain to you what polio is. Just go on YouTube, Google polio, even images, you can see it. We live at a time that you have information at your fingertips if you choose to. So if you get the polio virus and you're not immunized, a small proportion of people will die. They'll never have a chance to be paralyzed. They will die because it paralyzes your muscles, your respiratory muscles. You can't breathe. You basically die early. And that's why when you look at the history of polio, they'll talk about the lung iron. The lung iron was basically a machine to help you breathe because you basically have lost your abilities to have your muscles working. A number of those that are lucky would have paralysis or weakness of the limbs, right? Either the upper limbs or the lower limbs more commonly. If you are paralyzed in the upper limbs, most likely that will affect your breathing muscles, so you may not be able to survive. So you will not see that. So commonly what you'll see in the community are people whose legs have lost their sensation completely. They need to use all sorts of mechanisms to be able to move. So it isn't difficult. You don't see it as often as I did. When I was a school kid, we used to have a lot of people who walked on their knees and using calipers and crutches and so on. We don't see it as much. We see it now in older people. How is it transmitted? It's an oral fecal transmission. That means that you have the virus in water, and anything that is used, if you clean vegetables with water, then you can be prone to that. So if you have exposure of human waste and water, and that gets to you, and you're not immunized, you can get polio. Of course, the highest probability of getting this disease is in the younger under 5s. Okay, that's why the emphasis is on the under 5s. But you cannot say that I cannot get because I am 66. I am 66. So it's important to know that immunizations are very important. And the strategy of using the live vaccine and the kill vaccine is very, very important, because as you get rid of the wild polio virus, you stop using the oral polio vaccine. If you go, for instance, to America, which eradicated, and I must make these 2 distinctions. Eliminating and eradicating is different. When you eradicate, it means you're completely wiped out from the face of the earth. When you eliminate, you've reduced the common incidence, but that virus does exist maybe in some laboratory and so on, or you put it under measure of control that you do not affect a lot of people. So the term we want to use for polio is eradication, not elimination. We talk about elimination for measles, but eradication for polio, just like we eradicated smallpox.
Yeah, I think that's a very wonderful definition of polio, and I think you've broken it down very clearly. We'll come later to maybe find out a bit more of what's happening in regard to a few cases that are being heard of here and there. But before we get into that, I want to ask you, Gita, maybe you can tell us about how did Rotary choose to get involved in polio? Why polio? Of all the diseases that existed. And like he has mentioned, when he was younger, he was able to see a lot of people with crutches, and they've reduced as a result of this vaccination. And a lot of us don't see the behind the scenes. We see the workers come and give us the drop, our children the drops, but we don't see what happens behind. What is the connection between polio eradication and Rotary?
Okay, so as Dr. Gitanga has mentioned, there used to be a lot of people affected by polio. due to ignorance and due to neglect and not knowing where this disease comes from. You suddenly wake up in the morning and your child is not able to move his hands or legs. There's panic. And, all sorts of stories went around saying, oh, the child has been cursed or whatever. It is nothing like that. As you have been told by the expert, science is behind this. Now, in 1985, a survey was taken for the number of people who were affected by polio. And at that time, there were 350,000 cases of polio per year around the world. And in a small island like Philippines, the Rotarians felt that we understand this disease is preventable. Why can't we do something about it? So the community and the Rotary clubs got together and says, let's protect our children from this debilitating, paralyzing disease. And they realized that within a few months, they saw the numbers going down. There were less complaints, but there were still too many. Even one is too many, as you can know. So Rotary's connection, it was a Rotary club in Philippines that started this. And then, as I said earlier, the magic of Rotary, it caught on and everybody decided, yes, we must eradicate this, protect our children against this evil disease that's really ruining the lives. A child who has polio is stigmatized, the family is stigmatized, and there's a lot of cost to a child who is affected by any form of disability. So imagine a mother bathing a child who is weak, with weak limbs at the age of 2, and the child grows up, becomes an adult, and still not self-sufficient. The mother is behind the child all the time. So there's a lot of cost implication, with having a disease in our community. But then Rotary clubs went over and beyond Philippines, and they said, you know what, we must do this. So they actually approached, I think, governments, they approached authorities, health authorities around the world. In every country, they saw, wow, the numbers of the cases, polio cases are going down. So over the years, Rotary has formed partnership with GPEI, which stands for Global Polio Eradication Initiative. And the partners in that initiative are WHO, CDC, who else? Rotary, the Gates Foundation, USAID, the Ministries of Health around the world. So all of us work together, and Rotary has been at the forefront. You may have heard the quote from Bill Gates. At one point, he said, if it wasn't for Rotary, we wouldn't have come this far.
The Gates Foundation is committed to the goal of polio eradication, and we are proud of our amazing partnership with Rotary.
From 350,000 cases a year, we're now down to 6 cases of polio a year. And even those 6 cases of polio are now concentrated in a very small geographical area. And 2 countries that are affected are Afghanistan and Pakistan. And Rotary is trying to ensure that all the funding support is given to those 2 countries, and that efforts are made to eradicate polio. You will be happy to hear that even in Afghanistan, for the past 3 months, there has not been a case. In Pakistan, the same thing for over 6 months. So Rotary is at the forefront, but all the expert partnerships bring the UNICEF, I should have mentioned. UNICEF is one of our organizations on the initiative. And with these partnerships, all offering their expertise, we are able to do so much more. So when we say the magic of Rotary, there's also magic in the collaboration and in the efforts that are jointly put together. For example, when Rotarians contribute towards polio, $1 is translated to $6 immediately by our matching multiplier effect, and the Gates Foundation who double our money. So every $1, Gates Foundation makes it into $2. So we're able to fight this. And honestly, the next 6 months in this year are critical to the fight for polio. We all have to really roll up our sleeves and pull up our socks and do what we can.
And there's something that is coming out from your story. In as much as Rotary is fighting polio, I see other elements about Rotary. Maybe you alluded to the magic of Rotary. And it does seem like magic. I had the WHO president in an interview once say that Rotary is the glue in this fight.
And that must have been Dr. Tedros.
Yes,
Dr.
yes.
Tedros is
Yeah.
an Ethiopian honorary Rotarian of the Rotary Club in Ethiopia.
Wow, wow! I
Yes,
didn't know
yes,
that.
yes,
And
yes.
I also heard that during this vaccination drive, when polio was being eradicated, I heard that even Sri Lanka, which was at war at some point, had the military sides all decided to stop the war to have their children vaccinated. Is that true?
That's very true.
Yeah.
At that time, I think the past president of Rotary International, Ravi Ravindran, hails from Sri Lanka, and he's also a very passionate Rotarian. He was negotiating peace with his team between the government and the rebellion party. I'm not quite sure which party it was, but there was conflict in the region, and President Ravi, at that time he was not the president, he was a Rotary leader. He was talking to both parties, and he said to them, look, which of you want your child paralyzed? Even if you don't talk to each other, even if you're having a conflict, which of you would want that? And of course, nobody did. And they stopped the war. And they've done that even in Afghanistan. Wow. They have done that, not stopped the war, but they have made pathways for the vaccinators to go into communities where the land is rugged, terrain is not very friendly to vaccinators walking on feet. But they have talked to the community leaders and said, can we have peace for 5 hours so that, and of course, there's a lot of discussion over and beyond vaccinators going. There's negotiation of peace, stalemate for a while. Some agree to have vaccination, some don't, they question it. So there is a lot of biases there, but they do talk about it, and they do allow mothers to bring their children out, or vaccinators to go and immunize the children.
About 2 months ago, we had about, 3 cases of polio at our border in Garissa. So for those who may not understand, where we are saying in 2020, we were declared polio-free, a type of polio, and then there are these other cases. What does that mean? Maybe, Dr. you could shed some light.
There was a report that was given by the Ministry of Health, figures as they stand, 8 cases of circulating vaccine-derived polio virus 2. Remember we said there's type 1, 2, and 3? Mm-hmm. And type 2 was removed from being part of the vaccine in 2016. Mm-hmm. And yet we had 2 of those type 2 being found in the environment. We had 5 cases of people who are actually paralyzed, and 3 of them were healthy, but they had the virus. And science has developed so much that we now do genotyping, and genotyping is basically looking at genetic sequences that we can actually tell this virus is the same one that came from elsewhere. We can track it down to its source. So we're able to track this down as having basically come from across the border. And that is a very important step that people must recognize, that we're able to do so much analysis to tell even where it came from. That is the same way that we've been able to look at the vaccine, the oral polio vaccine type 2, which tends to change a lot, and change that vaccine, particular vaccine, which doesn't exist since 2016. And therefore, the vaccine that we're giving now is incorporating the type 2 that had been pulled out. It was a triple vaccine from 2016, is a bivalent, that means it's 2, type 1 and 3, and yet we find type 2. So the campaign we are doing, which we call an SIA, it's called, what's the meaning of SIA? Supplementary immunization activity. It's not routine, it is supplementary because it's falling in between. That particular vaccine that's being given is incorporating that particular type. And that answers the question, should a child get if they had been getting? Yes, they must get, because they haven't gotten the type 2. And the type 2 they are getting in this campaign is a specific one that does not change into a polio, it does not mutate. I was trying to avoid using the word mutation, but at least PDG Gita is saying that. So there is an important element of screening all the time. Surveillance is the word you hear all the time. Anybody with a history of non-traumatic injury that causes paralysis, you must think about polio. And you must look for the specimens of stools to look for the poliovirus. Then number two, environmental sampling, where you basically sample water. They do that on a routine basis in certain centers. If you find even one poliovirus, that is already an outbreak. So a paralyzed person is confirmed to have polio, or an environmental sample, that's an outbreak already. And you must do something about it. And as I've said, we're able to track down where did it come from. These cases were described around about Garissa. So don't stop anyone getting. If you had gotten polio, the ordinary bivalent polio, if you got this other one, does it harm you? No, it doesn't. There is no harm in getting it, because the more people you protect, the better it is.
And I'd like to maybe throw a follow-up question, maybe to you, Gita, about, he's mentioned about surveillance and ensuring that even when we feel like we are free of polio, we have to continue doing this surveillance and monitoring, which I know can be an expensive activity. How does Rotary go about surveillance?
So as I said earlier, Rotary works with the partners, and the expertise amongst the partners would be WHO for this particular initiative. For surveillance, it would be all the agencies, but ministries of health play a big part here. And as part of their mandate, they are supposed to check the quality of water, the quality of waste. They're supposed to check it. They do that regularly. And they're supposed to report back to their authorities. As polio, if it comes up, it's escalated and immediately action is taken. So what does Rotary do? To put it very bluntly, Rotary finances most of this. Okay, with the help of Gates Foundation. So Rotary is regularly in touch with the Ministries of Health, with all the partners, UNICEF, as I said, WHO, CDC, and surveillance and advocacy is critical, because by us talking more about this, people will be aware. They will inquire about how their child can be protected, and Rotary provides works with the ministries to provide centers where children and mothers are guided and they are protected against this virus.
So let's talk money. Now that we're talking about money, I'm trying to imagine that this extensive fight against polio over 30 years, a period of time across countries, must be a very expensive venture. How much does it cost to eradicate polio?
Okay, so in simple terms, it costs 60 US cents to protect one child. 60 US cents, which is less than $1, which is less than 150 shillings. When we were talking about dollars, it was 100 bob. It used to be 60 shillings, but it's still less than 100 shillings to protect a child against polio. Rotary targets and has a goal every year of collecting $50 million from you and me and Rotary partners and friends. Our $50 million is matched 2-to-1 by the Gates Foundation. So every year, as Rotary, in partnership with Gates, we contribute $150 million to the main fund that then now goes around the world through all the agencies to make sure that the messages, the advocacy, surveillance, and protection is done through that funding. Now, let me tell you, I did say earlier, 350,000 cases a year. And you said, what have you done for the last 30 years? We have protected 3 billion children from paralysis, from walking with crutches and braces. And as Mr. Gates said, thanks to Rotary, that 3 billion children have been protected against polio. So our funding is close, if not more than $150 million a year.
Okay.
And very happy to say that Rotarians are incredibly generous people. When they know that their $1 will protect a child, people will say, you know, here's my $10, here's my $20. Every human being wants to do something good. And just by contributing to the fund in our district, in our clubs, and ensuring that we can go online if we don't like the process of, you know, channeling the money through any agency, we go online and we contribute to our foundation. There is a polio fund, and it's incredible, the generosity of Rotarians. And I'd like to tell you, very soon on the 24th of October is going to be World Polio Day.
Yes, yes.
And we are going to make sure that we talk about it, because we want to remind Rotarians that you are good people, you want to do good. This is an opportunity. So please go ahead, go online, go with your credit card and M-Pesa and contribute to the Rotary Foundation for the polio fund, so that we can forever get rid of this disease, because it is completely preventable.
Yeah. I like that you've brought up the polio fund, which is part of the Rotary Foundation, and would like to know, you've mentioned $150 million that Rotarians give. This polio fund money, when a Rotarian, for example, or even a non-Rotarian who is watching and wants to contribute to this particular cause, could you tell us maybe very specifically how a Rotarian who's maybe probably never given to the foundation, or even to the polio fund for that matter, where can they start? Where is the starting point? Where can they go and say, you know what, I'm so touched, I want to give to this cause? Where do they start?
I would suggest simply to go online to our website, www.rotary.org, and you will, you know, instantly come to the Rotary page, and it will tell you about what Rotary does. And then there's a button that says donate, but donate to which cause. So those causes are specified there, because we have 7 areas of focus, as you know, in Rotary. And we work in these different areas because Rotarians have passions that they want to live. They want to live their passions, and Rotary allows them to live these passions through these different channels to contribute. And if one wants to contribute to the polio fund, they go straight to the polio fund. And there is an option to give $5, $25, $50, $100. And there is a place where you can say other, and you can want to donate only $1. You can do that. And then there is another option that says, do you want to give it every month, every year, twice a year, 3 times? So you can actually, you know, plan to say, you know, I want to save 10 children this year, or I want to save 1 child every month. And you can make 12 installments, 12 different payments, reoccurring, and sitting at your desk, you are actually saving lives.
I think donating to the cause and the polio fund is one of the ways that our audience can participate in giving to this particular cause. So for you, Dr. I'll just ask you, apart from donating, Gita has covered it really well, that I could be sitting wherever I am and I can give my dollar, which we've learned is less than 100 Kenyan shillings, and you can impact, save a child somewhere from polio. What else can people do to participate in the fight to end polio now?
Yeah, thank you very much, Caroline. I'll back up a little bit. When we have supplementary immunization activity like we had last month, we're going to have this month and next month, it's basically a mopping up exercise to cover up for areas we failed in routine immunization. Routine immunization is what we do on a day-to-day basis. If you go to any clinic near where children are seen, you'll find a place where they get their measles vaccine, they get their polio vaccine, they get their rota vaccine, malaria vaccine, depending on where they are. That's done on a routine basis. It's a fixed point, right? So having an SIA, that supplementary immunization activity, is basically, if you like to put it lightly, failure of routine immunization. And I talk about failure in very generic, general terms. We get immunizations when we are healthy. If I have a pain right now, I want a painkiller, like yesterday. I do not need to be persuaded to take a painkiller. But in a vaccine, you are actually protecting yourself for a future disease you may get or may not get. But you want to check out if you will survive without getting a vaccine for a disease that could kill you. The fact that you get a vaccine to protect you for a disease in future makes vaccines a little bit different, because the demand in the vaccine isn't there. There is demand for a painkiller if you have a toothache. So by nature, vaccines are seen differently, or people are a little casual about it. What they do not see is what they protect you from. So when you don't see certain things, then you hide yourself from the fact that it does help you. And we become complacent about vaccines because of the success they have been. So vaccines are their own worst enemies. The success of vaccines have become an enemy of that. So what are we asking Rotarians? You are trusted where you live. There are clinics near where you live, and just pay a visit. Yeah. I think we are respectable enough. Wear your badge. I forgot mine today. Yeah. And meet the in charge and say you just want to talk to the mothers just to reassure them. Yes. And those are in routine clinics. There are also other difficult to reach areas, and I want to say this. Difficult to reach areas are people who know a lot, who are the people in this room and people listening to me, because they have a lot of information. When they create hesitancy in terms of saying, why are they giving so many vaccines? Part of that comes from not knowing. And that's why we are doing this program of talking to us to educate ourselves about it. When you go to those places and say, you need these vaccines, and you come from that, if you like, gated community, you are an influencer. Yes. Many people live in Nairobi, but they influence things that happen in every corner of the country because you'll be called by your relatives. So we want Rotarians to be able to educate themselves, know who to ask if you don't know who to ask. Then once you are armed yourself, be a reassuring person in that particular area, and you can participate in those exercises.
So from what we are hearing for our audience at home is that you can participate in ending polio by donating to the Polio Fund on Rotary website or through the Jenga Foundation for our district. As Dr. Githanga has mentioned, you can participate in campaigns, whether it is the SIA, like the Rotary Club of Kikuyu recently did, by participating and giving the vaccination, or by even participating in the routine one and partnering with the high density clinics within your area. And also it's very, very important that you learn and educate yourself about the disease, learn about polio, read more about it. You can get the information on endpolio.org, and you can even get the surveillance data on a daily basis from the Global Polio Eradication Initiative website as well. On October 24th, you mentioned that there's the World Polio Day coming up. What are some of the ways you encourage Rotary clubs or even non-Rotarians to mark this day?
So I need to emphasize that polio does not affect Rotary alone, and Rotarians should not be the only people fighting polio. We should all hold hands with all our friends in the community, our neighbors, people we meet at the church, wherever we all can become an advocate. We can all talk about making sure, not only on Polio Day, it should be every day, make sure advocacy is at the forefront of our conversations with mothers, with children, with medics, with whoever we meet. Remember, and again, Doctor mentioned this, that polio affects, the source of polio. He talked about the source of polio. The source of polio mainly comes from unhygienic situations, and it seems to be very prevalent in low-resource communities. So we need to ensure that we reach the furthest of people so that the message is gotten through to them. So World Polio Day should be a celebration of all the activities we do during the year. It should not be one day of talking about polio. It should be 364 days of action, 365th day, which is 24th of October. We celebrate the success. We talk about the children that we have protected during that year, or appreciated the polio vaccinators, appreciated our partners, appreciate our ministries, our doctors. These are the people at the forefront of the fight. And so we must continue this. So as we build our efforts towards 24th of October, let it not be it should be the culmination of all our efforts during the year. That's how I'd like Rotary clubs to continue doing what they're doing. We're doing amazing work in Rotary District 9212 at the moment. But that is because we did have those 8 cases of polio that emanated through our borders, in our camps in Garissa. If it hadn't, I would be fearful of what we would be doing now. So I'm glad that we got a little bit of a nudge and a push from those cases so that we protect more children, and let it be 24th of October be really the climax, the culmination of all that we do. So I would like Rotarians to continue doing what they're doing, but take it forward. Let's take it. You know, it's like we Kenyans, we know about the marathons and running the race. And as we're all sitting glued to our television, we are watching for our champion to reach that line first. Well, you know, my friends, the line, the finish line is within our sight. This is when it takes the most effort. When our marathon runners run, they've used up all the energy and they can see that now they know they have to give it their best shot. Yes. That is when they have to work the hardest. That is when they have to run their fastest and touch that line sooner. And we can see the finish line in our vision. It is there now. We have to put up as much effort as we can to make sure we reach that finish line for our children, for our mothers, for our healthy communities.
Indeed. Thank you. Well, very well said. Dr. Githanga, closing remarks?
Very good. I want to remind us that we had an SIA on the 24th, 28th of last month. We have another one on 28th to the 2nd of October this month, and we have another one. There are 3 that are going to be there in 10 counties. Please reach out where you can in the chat platforms. You are on WhatsApp platforms to basically talk about this. Pass on the Rotary messages of polio prevention in those areas so that you educate a lot more than ourselves. I think PDG Gita did talk about it's not just Rotarians, it is all of us. It's everybody that you get into contact with, whether it's your relative that lives in Tana River or Wajir or Mandera, or even in the gated communities of the urban areas. Those are also hard to reach populations that we need to be able to reach out to. So contribution, SIAs are expensive exercises, and that's why Rotary works so hard. People pay, but also take action. Don't just give your $1, $2, $100. Please participate by educating yourself.
And you know, I'm so happy that you said that, because the minute you put 2 drops in a child's mouth, your head is saying, I have saved this child. Do 10 and you've saved 10 lives. So Rotarians must feel the passion. That is where the magic of Rotary comes in. Imagine a mother's face light up and they know my child is saved from this one disease. You know, there's so much out there for this child, but at least I protected my child thanks to Rotary. We're really this close to ending polio. We must bring it to 0.
We are this close to ending polio, and we will end it with your effort and participation.
Fact or fiction? Polio is the only disease that Rotary is fighting.
It's fiction. Polio is our foremost project. It is our priority project, but Rotary has a focus area of disease prevention. So we are fighting different diseases.
Vaccines are optional.
Fiction. They're actually mandatory. The reasons you are alive today and listening to this conversation is because you got vaccines.
So there you have it, folks. Another episode of Tagline, where we've talked about ending polio and what you can do to participate. Thank you very much, Trustee Gita Manek. And thank you very much, Dr. Githanga. So see you all on our next episode, and thank you for watching.